All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for this presentation today. As you all know, my name is Claudia Chamberlain, and we are learning about Sancerre today as part of my pursuit to become a certified wine educator. So I'm going to share my screen with you and we will get started. Okay. Let me pull this down. All right, so just by a show of hands, who has had Sancerre before? Yay, love it. All right, so I'm gonna minimize you guys so that we can see the full screen. All right, so why are we doing this today? We are doing this because we all love Sauvignon Blanc. It is the most popular white wine varietal right now in the United States, especially in the DC market where I live. And as we know, Sauvignon Blanc originated in France. So the winemaking styles are really mostly the same all across the world. So the differentiation really comes from the place. Another reason that we're doing this today is that we all love to travel and we can't do that right now. So I figured we could have a traveling from home and we can learn about French culture through the lens of Sancerre. And another thing that we're going to be learning today is just European wine label comprehension. So we sell mostly New World wines with the varietal listed on the label, but the Old World will have everything sort of hidden from you. So it's all about the region. You have to know the story behind the region to really get what's in the bottle. All right, so we have a set of learning objectives for today's presentation. After this presentation, you will be able to describe the concept of terroir and the French wine appellation system. You'll be able to discuss where Sancerre is, what wines it produces, and what makes it unique. And you will be able to differentiate between three major Sauvignon Blanc styles. So we'll be pausing for a set of questions after each section. So please just hold your questions until the very end in the interest of time. All right, so we cannot start to talk about Sancerre without talking about the French concept of terroir first. So if you haven't heard of terroir, it doesn't really translate that well to the English language, honestly, but it means a sense of place. So the Oxford Companion to Wine defines it as the complete natural environment in which a particular wine is produced, including factors such as the soil, topography, and climate. So Sancerre really only makes two grapes. They make a white Sauvignon Blanc and a red Pinot Noir. And so the fact that you have this pretty big region with a lot of different styles of wine coming out of it, but only two grapes, it really lends itself to the notion that terroir is extremely important here. All right, so when you pick up a bottle of Sancerre, as I know you all did before this is what the bottle is going to look like. So it'll say Sancerre, and then below it, it'll say Appellation d'origine contrôlée. It'll have the vintage, the vigneron, and then Produit de France. So this AOC, this Appellation d'origine contrôlée, that is a protected, delimited wine region area. So that really does three things. It indicates geography. So it indicates the geographical origin and the quality and the style of the wine to expect. So there are certain styles of wine that are permitted from each AOC. So from Sancerre, it's going to be a dry white and a dry red and a dry rosé. Those are the only three things that are permitted to come out with Sancerre on the label. It also certifies quality. So there are over 360 AOCs in France. The Loire Valley, which is the greater region that Sancerre is within, is one of the 11 permitted growing regions. So Sancerre is just one of those 360 AOCs. The third thing that this does is it protects the region. So there's a specific set of grapes allowed, as we talked about. There is a specific set of yields, so they can only really harvest so many grapes per year. There's different limits on the alcohol, on the sugar levels, all of those types of things. And so it really is all done in order to protect that same sense of terroir. So the Sancerre grape growers really want you to know when you pick up a bottle of their wine, you know exactly what to expect. Okay, so when we look at this wine map of France, as you can see, Paris is up in the north center of the country. And 200 miles south of that is where you find Sancerre. So it's in this red star right here. And this river is the Loire River. So this is the Loire River Valley region. And it used to be a major trade route back in the day. So starting in the Middle Ages, it was where kind of everything came in over at this port at the Atlantic Ocean, came this way via river and then up to Paris via caravan or what have you. So the wines of Sancerre really found their fame from an early age in the cafes of Paris. And so if you look at where we are on this map, we have Champagne to the north, we have Chablis and Burgundy to the right. And so Champagne, Chablis, and Burgundy, they're all known for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So back in the day, Sancerre really only made Pinot Noir, and it wasn't even really a red wine. It was more pink, like a rosé style wine, but it was really popular. And so after a little bug called phylloxera came in and wiped out all of the vineyards in the late 1800s, they had to kind of make a quick buck, and they had to turn around and they had to figure out, like, okay, how can we recover from this? How can we make money? And so they started planting Sauvignon Blanc. And so that's how Sauvignon Blanc came to be in the region of Sancerre. And then in I think it was the 1980s or thereabouts, they started serving Sancerre at all of the cafes in Paris, and it became the thing to drink all over the world because everybody looks to Paris when they're looking for the latest trend. And so the other two wines that we're drinking today, the ones from California and New Zealand, those vineyards weren't really planted until the 90s. And that was because they were taking advantage of that trend of having Sauvignon Blanc be really all over the world. And so they wanted to kind of hop on that and be a part of that. So if we look over here, this is the Upper Loire, the whole Loire River Valley. So there's 4 different regions within it. They make different grapes. I mean, we have Muscadet, we have Chinon, we have Chenin, all sort of throughout this. So the Upper Loire is Sauvignon Blanc land. So Sancerre, definitely the most popular coming out of this area. You also have Puy-Fumé, Menetou-Salon, and Quincy are 2 others that you'll see out in the market as well. Okay, let me bring your pictures back up. Okay, so some questions for you all. What is terroir?
It means a sense of place.
Yes.
It's the complete environment in which the wine is grown, planted, created, cultivated.
Perfect. And what is the purpose of the French appellation system?
I think it's to help to categorize wines. So you'll know when you have an appellation and you're growing a wine in that appellation, and you're following the rules that are set in place by the system, that you'll be creating a high quality Sancerre or whatever type of wine.
Yes, perfect. And in what larger region of France is Sancerre located?
It's underneath Paris, which I saw.
Loire Valley.
Like,
The Loire.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about just Sancerre itself. So I'm going to minimize you guys again. All right, so Sancerre in a nutshell. So these are really the 5 things that make Sancerre as famous as it is. So we already talked about the rich history starting in the Middle Ages. Then we have the cool climate. So when we talk about a cool climate in grape growing, it really just means that the grape, which is a fruit, struggles to ripen. So it struggles to make the sufficient amount of sugars, and it struggles to sort of, when those sugars are done in winemaking, they're converted to alcohol. So when you are in a cool climate, you have something that really ends up much higher in acid than it does in sugar. So it lends itself to a really taut, wiry freshness in the wines, and Sauvignon Blanc is just truly at its best when it comes from a cool climate. We will also talk about the Loire River in just a second, but it has several different moderating effects that really make it possible to grow in such a cool climate. We are also going to talk about the unique soils of Sancerre. So there are 3 distinct types. A lot of the times people even put them on the label just because they're so famous. And so they're chalky, limestone-driven soils for the most part and really lend themselves to the minerality. And then lastly, just focusing on 2 grapes here. So 80% of the plantings are Sauvignon Blanc, which originated in the Loire Valley, and 20% is Pinot Noir. So that's used for both red and rosé wines. Okay. So the moderating effects of water. As you can see, we have the beautiful Loire River over here, and this does 3 things. It reflects sunlight. So when you're in a cool climate, all of that extra energy that you get from the reflection really benefits the vines and helps them to achieve photosynthesis, helps them to ripen. It just does all of the things that you need an extra moderating effect to do when you're in a cool climate to really grow quality grapes. It also serves as a temperature regulator. So bodies of water are slower to heat and cool than land. So when a cold snap comes through, it really helps to retain heat to protect against frosts. And it also carves out hillsides. So as you can see, there's some nice little hillside slopes next to this river. And what that does is it amplifies sunlight and it creates better drainage, and it also provides aspect. So aspect is really just the degree of slope So if you think about this as being a vineyard and you have vines growing at each level, if you have the steeper the aspect that you have, the more sunlight that can hit the vine at different angles, rather than if it was just flat, it would just be hitting it at one angle, making it really hard to ripen fully. Okay, so the 3 soils of Sancerre. So we have a map over here, and the soil types are going to be sort of indicated with the different colored stars. So the first one is Les Caillotes. It's a gravelly Oxfordian limestone. So very expressive personality from these wines. It stretches all the way down from Saint-Gemme down to Buet, which is the most famous. The wine that we're having today is from Souris and Vaux. And these are the most easy drinking wines. So they're intended to be drunk on release, no aging potential here. And probably this is going to be the one that you find the most on the commercial scene. The next one is the Terre Blanche. So this is the same as Kimmeridgian Marl. It's the same ridge that runs from Champagne down through Chablis, down through Sancerre. So it's a mix of limestone and clay. There's a lot of fossilized oyster shells, which people swear you can taste sea spray in the wines. They do create the wines with the most density and structure, the most age-worthy for sure. And Sancerre does not have a Grand Cru, but if they did, it would be this village of Chavignon, just because it has the highest concentration of the Terre Blanche, which also does run in this whole area. It's just predominantly concentrated right here in Chavignon. And then the last one, which this is probably the most unique one to Sancerre, is called Silex. So this is one that you'll see on wine labels pretty often. If producers growing their wines on Silex soil, they like to brag about it. And you can think of it as just being flint. So it's wonderful at retaining heat, and it allows grapes to ripen and really preserves that minerality. And all of the Silex is concentrated over here on the western bank of the Loire River. So Silex also is over here in Puy-Fumé. So you'll see that on their labels too. It's the most elegant version of Sancerre. Okay, let me bring you guys back. All right, so some questions. What are the 3 styles of wine produced in Sancerre, and which grapes are used to produce them?
I'll take a guess.
It's just colors.
Oh, it's the colors. Oh gosh, I don't know.
I don't
So
know.
it's
Light, full-bodied.
no, just red, white, and rosé.
Oh, red, white, and rosé.
And which grapes do they use in Sancerre?
The grape from Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir.
Yes, perfect. And what are some unique geographical factors in Sancerre?
Soil.
The vineyards are right by rivers.
Yep, the rivers. Yes, perfect.
The slope in which they're grown.
The aspect.
The aspect.
And so based off of what we've learned about Sancerre being a cooler climate, do you think that Sancerre is going to be higher or lower in acid than the New World Sauvignon Blancs that we're trying?
Higher.
Higher, definitely. Yeah, great job. And just a little fun fact for you all, because I know we love our food and wine pairings. If you look over here, this is something that comes up time and time again on wine exams. There's a classic food pairing out there for Sancerre, and it is goat cheese. I know we all love goat cheese here. So if you ever want to try a fantastic pairing, the acid really matches here, and the weight of the cheese with the weight of the wine, which is the classic sort of element when you're trying to find a food and wine pairing. And this is called a croton de Chavignon. So it's goat cheese from the village of Chavignon. Okay, and now we're going to taste. So you can go ahead and pour the Sancerre in your glass. We're just going to go over a couple of notable Sancerre producers before. So the one that you all have now in your glass is the Lauverger. So this is Moulin de Rières. It's a classic wine that you find in a lot of big wine stores. They do a really great job with distribution. And like we said, it's from Souris and Vaux. So it's going to be that Les Caillotes soil. You're going to have a really nice expressive fruit personality. Of all the Sancerres on the market, this is most similar to a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, in my personal opinion. So I think that's probably why it's been so popular. We also have Domaine de la Porte. So this is one that I worked with a lot in North Carolina, selling in the on-premise. It's a great biodynamic producer. If you ever see it out, I would totally grab it. It's one of my favorites. And then we have Domaine Durand. This is probably the most entry level in price points. This is the highest you'll see it, but it can get down to $20.99 or something like that, which is really good for an imported French white. And then we have Pascal Jolivet. So with the increasing importance of sustainability out there, a lot of people, a lot of consumers like us are looking for wines that are more focused on organic and biodynamic winemaking. And so Pascal Jolivet has been one of the pioneers of that movement. And then Domaine de la Perrier. So this is just a high-end option if you're looking to really splurge and have a nice bottle of Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, so around the world, the 3 regions that we're tasting from today, Sancerre, France. So when you have wine growing regions, they're typically situated between 30 and 50 degrees latitude, and that's both above and below the equator. That's just sort of where the grapes are able to ripen. They don't get sunburned. It works out really well for them. So Sancerre sits at the fringe of that, being at 47 degrees latitude. It's a cool continental climate, meaning that, you know, there's no really big body of water by it, except the Loire River does help to moderate those cool climates. But there's definitely 4 distinct seasons in Sancerre. And then Marlborough, New Zealand, 42 degrees latitude. So still a cool climate, but it's maritime with a ton of sunshine. So the Pacific Ocean really, as we know, very cold. It really helps to, I think, chill down the area of the vines in a way that it probably would be too hot for grape growing. And so the Pacific Ocean serves as a moderator there. And then we have the North Coast in California. So 39 degrees latitude, definitely going to be the warmest of the 3 that we taste today. And it's a cool Mediterranean climate. So the North Coast is really just a grouping of Napa, Sonoma, Solano, and Lake counties. And so Mediterranean, that just really means it's pretty steady throughout the year. There's not too many differences between seasons. There's pretty even rainfall concentrated in the summer, but it never gets too cold. So it's a pretty great place to grow grapes. It's also being moderated by the Pacific Ocean. Okay, the tasting. So wine number 1, the Lauverger Moulin de Rivière. I'm just going to walk us through the tasting notes here. So when we look at the 3 of these, there are really 3 different categories of Sauvignon Blanc that we're tasting here beyond just the region. So the Sancerre is going to be the most minerality driven of the 3. And so what that means is on the nose, you're going to get like some crushed vitamins, some rocks. There's a lot more like rocky whetstone minerality going on here than there is going to be in the other 2. It's going to be yellow green in color. The fruit character will be lime, lemon, grapefruit, green apple, and melon. We have some secondary aromas of wildflower, lemongrass, asparagus, and of course those wet rocks. And then it's going to be, well, we'll give it a taste first on the palate. It's going to be medium high in acid. You feel that drawback on your jaw, approaching high in acid. Like we said, high acid equals usually a cool climate. So there's high acid, less fruit character, and also medium alcohol. So that really all lends itself to it being from a cool climate. It's also a very dry wine. There's very little residual sugar to be detected here. So now we'll grab our wine number 2. So that's going to be Whitehaven Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough, New Zealand. And this is going to be the most grapefruit and grass driven of the 3. So on the nose, the grapefruit should stick out to you from about, honestly, more than 6 inches away. It's very pungent. It's also going to be yellow green in color, a little bit greener than the Sancerre. And you're going to have peach, apricot, grapefruit, gooseberry, guava, passion fruit, and lemon. This is a little bit more tropical fruit than is typical for a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, but 2020 was an incredibly warm vintage for them. So it's just a warm vintage from a cool climate. And you also have a really nice element of basil on this one. So you've got some basil, some green grass, some fennel, and some riverbank. Of course, there's always minerality in every glass if you look for it. And then on the palate, this wine is going to be medium high in acid, dry, and medium high in alcohol. And again, that acid balanced with the alcohol, it's a little bit warmer of a climate than Sancerre. It's a little bit more seamlessly balanced, like the acid matches the alcohol. And then we have the William Hill Sauvignon Blanc. So this one is going to be the most fruit driven of the 3. It's going to be yellow green in color. On the nose, we are going to have Meyer lemon, grapefruit, fruit cup, some tropical fruits, guava, and pineapple. So we're also going to have some green bell pepper, which is indicative of a warmer climate, some freshly cut grass, and a little bit of tarragon herbal character. On the palate, this wine is medium high in acid. It's a little lower than the others in acid. This wine is dry and it's medium high in alcohol. So again, the fruit driving the bus here lends it to being from a warmer climate. Okay. All right, any final questions?
why is the New Zealand and the North Coast California, do they have higher alcohol content than the Sancerre?
So that's a great question. So that's all climate. So because it gets warmer there than it does in France, the grapes are really able to build up their sugar a lot quicker. So they ripen a little bit quicker, and they build a lot more sugar. So when you pick the grapes in Sancerre, they have to pick them because, you know, the bad weather is coming, fall is here, they've got to get them off the vines so as not to damage them. And they don't have a ton of wiggle room to leave them on the vine longer and hope that they ripen more. So in California and in New Zealand, they're able to pick when they're at that optimum sugar level. And if you get it at the right sugar level, it just translates to a higher level of alcohol. So it's like in winemaking, yeast plus sugar equals alcohol.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
So yeah. It's fun to be able to taste it in the glass.
Yeah.
All right. So after this, you all can now describe the concept of terroir and the French wine appellation system. Yes? Great. We can discuss where Sancerre is, what wines it produces, and what makes it unique. And we can now differentiate between 3 major Sauvignon Blanc styles. Great. Okay. So thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want to learn more about Sancerre, you can feel free to look at any of these sources. I'm happy to share this presentation with you.
Thank you, Claudia.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers to Sancerre.